Funding for The Audit, Black Women in Leadership, Post-George Floyd, is brought to you in part by Grand Victoria Foundation and generous Chicagoans like you.
Grand Victoria Foundation believes in a future where racial justice isn't just an idea, it's reality, where Black communities across Illinois have the power, resources, and opportunities needed to thrive. We support the wisdom, leadership, and work of those most impacted by the systems we look to change, trusting their ability to build power and change narratives. When all communities have the resources and support they need, all Illinoisans can thrive, ensuring equity in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is collective liberation. This is the work of Grand Victoria Foundation.
I'm Tracy D. Hall, and this is The Audit. Chapter 3, Tumultuous Present, Uncertain Future. In 2023, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion became code for unqualified, specifically the hiring and promotion of Black and brown employees, and tied to a woke political agenda. With dizzying speed, a new presidential administration made good on its promises to erase all remnants of DEI from the federal government. Despite the fact that years of study have shown the primary beneficiary of DEI to be white people, with the employment of Black women and people of color being targeted with the threatened lifting of anti-segregation protections, is DEI dead on arrival? Or is America about to learn the hard lesson that racism is bad business?
Black lives are only gonna matter for about 5 minutes. And when I said that in the meeting, everyone's like, ouch, that sounds so disingenuous. It's like, it's not disingenuous, it's history. It's history.
When great progress is made, great resistance comes, right? So this is where we are now, right? We made so much progress that not only did we see a Barack Obama, we saw a Kamala Harris. Oh my goodness. What does that mean for people who have a particular claim on the country, right?
Well, now shifting from the person who takes the notes to the person who's gonna call you out and say, hey, why didn't you consider Johnny for that job? And why would you hire him? That's an uncomfortable conversation that they weren't prepared to answer, and damn sure didn't want to answer from a more junior African-American woman who had a specific role on the team to just shut up and do the work.
There's a certain burden to that, quite honestly, that you feel everything you're doing is representing the entire race, which is ridiculous. We are not monolithic, and we shouldn't have that pressure, yet we do. We think that everything that we do is being looked at in a particular way, and it often is, because we are first, because we are the only, because we are Black.
A lot of this is about power. Dismantling the government is about power. Billionaires running our government is about power.
And when we think about this movement of DEI, because it's about power and control and corporate greed, they were gonna position themselves in whatever way to win.
I mean, this backlash is actually proof that the movement worked. It is fierce, and it is rabid, and it is because we had 50 years of tepid diversity efforts.
But a new article featured on CNBC.com right now says that technology companies, including Alphabet, the parent company of Google, also Meta platforms, have made big cuts to those DEI programs in 2023 so far.
Texas isn't the first, they're actually the second state to ban DEI offices. Florida was the first. And according to the Best Colleges website, at least 18 other states have introduced similar legislation So more are expected to follow.
I just want to acknowledge that that doesn't mean that it's the end of the movement. It actually signals that the movement is working. And so the fear campaign is to convince us that it never worked, that it was, for meritless opportunities, and that, racism doesn't exist. And so we should never have folks of color around in any way, shape, or form, and we should never say those words again. Man, people are scared.
I don't know if you've seen that illustration where you see three people standing on a box looking over a fence, and they're looking at a baseball game, and everyone has the same exact box, same height. But you notice that everyone is not the same height, and everyone can't see over the fence. That's equality, because everyone has the same box. If we're talking about equity, that means that because I'm a little shorter, I need a taller box. Or because I'm taller, I need a shorter box. But equity means that I'm gonna have resources and the access that I need to be successful. And it does not look the same for everyone. Yet, that is often what happens.
So there's a more sophisticated way you have to approach equity than just starting a department and then hiring somebody brown to run the department. And then being shocked when the one brown person that's brought in that's resented by the person that thinks they took their resources is not having leeway in helping fundamentally change the culture of the organization.
The word equity is a key value in the diversity, equity, and inclusion argument. Commonly, it is misunderstood or misused. It does not mean equal. It is understanding not everyone is dealt the same hand in life. Equity means treating people fairly, recognizing that they may have different needs. However, in our current anti-DEI climate, we see the inaccurate use of certain buzzwords. Words like diversity, DEI, and critical race theory are used to represent single stereotypes. It is as if definitions of words no longer matter.
So now you see what equity, what inclusion, diversity, not just on race, but really you just meant race, and you just meant one race most of the time. And then it's like sprinkles on top of the cupcake if you can like throw trans people under the bus. We didn't really mean disabled people. Unless they're brown disabled people, or unless they're homeless under the viaduct that I have to drive through. Like that, yeah, them too, put them in there. And there's a sophistication of understanding people's misunderstanding of language that is at play here that we should not be naive about. So using CRT, critical race theory, and DEI interchangeably all the time, CRT, DEI, right? So you're just like, oh, I'm so tired of hearing about it, right? So there's a flooding of the information systems that if you're not paying attention, you don't understand, or it doesn't directly affect you, or you think it doesn't. Those two things are interchangeable, and it's all about people who could just go to college, they got a Starbucks too, whining. What are they whining about now?
This is a CBS News special report. Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. President Biden is about to offer his reaction to the Supreme Court's landmark ruling overturning affirmative action in college admissions. In a 6-3 decision, the court said that Harvard University and the University of North Carolina's admissions programs that take race into account violate the Constitution.
The landmark ruling by the Supreme Court effectively ending affirmative action could have consequences far beyond higher education.
Its reasoning is a roadmap for challenges to diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives at so many corporations. And conservative activists, they are already targeting the hiring programs, internship programs, and promotions at major employers like Morgan Stanley, McDonald's, and Starbucks.
You know, there was a watershed moment when the Supreme Court made the ruling around college admissions as it relates to affirmative action. I think that was the nail in the coffin. What I also know is that There had been court cases being won in different states where they had already ruled around college admissions, and the vast majority of the general population wasn't following it because it was local state news.
You start with colleges, and now you have government agencies, which, employs, the vast majority of Americans. When you think about industries and sectors, the government's a large employer, right? And so it's gonna trickle over into corporate America. It just naturally has to. And I think, when people focus on like politics and elections, et cetera, that's why they matter, not just for like who's gonna occupy the seat of presidency, but electing local officials heavily matter too. Like state laws matter. Who's your mayor matters. Who's your, senator matters, because all of that rolls up. And then when we think about the courts, in his first term, he appointed the most judges ever.
When you look at affirmative action and you think about, we have to end the affirmative action because it helps folks of color. Do you know who gets helped the most by affirmative action? It's white women.
We have reached a turning point. With the affirmative action ruling, it opens the door for what some would call an anti-diversity movement. In April 2023, the Heritage Foundation publishes Project 2025, a playbook for a conservative presidency. It foretells fundamental government changes in 2025. Many thought it was too extreme, even fiction. It was not. There is a new momentum in the country, and it is in plain sight.
One more time. Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
Anti-Semitic rhetoric.
And is it anti-Semitic rhetoric?
Anti-Semitic rhetoric, when it crosses into conduct that amounts to bullying, harassment, intimidation, that is actionable conduct, and we do take action.
What happened to Claudine Gay is a broader thing around Ivy League colleges too. She was the first to fall. She was an easy target, but all of them are falling. So what's happening now, there are so many sectors where people don't want to be CEO.
Claudine Gay never had to explain to any other Black of her colleagues, I can guarantee you, what happened to her and why. Because we all knew. We've all been there before. We've all had those experiences, but it still resulted in her resignation. It came back to what we talked about a little bit before, power, right? The power just was not there to quote unquote save her. And the reality of this, she doesn't need to be saved. She did her job, she bowed out, she resigned. But for me, the thing that made me proud was the way she resigned. She wanted to be very clear. Like, she published op-eds, she talked about her experiences, she made people understand like how we got here to this moment. This is not a question about my qualifications or who I am, etc. This is about me leading an institution that people don't feel like I am qualified to lead.
Turns out corporate America doesn't seem to actually care about diversity, equity, and inclusion.
It's the Wall Street Journal reporting that activists want to get politics out of business, and they are suing Target, some other companies over progressive company stances.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion policies at companies across the country now may be at risk.
Look, the theory here is that companies have been violating federal employment law, number one, exposing themselves to big liability, for which they would presumably have to pay shareholders money to fix. The other is that they're depriving shareholders of the best talent.
There is not a single piece of research, legitimate research, validated research, that doesn't show that diverse workforce, again, the more life experiences, the more perspectives, the different way of thinking that you have, and that is, all dimensions, race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, all of it. The more diverse, the better ideas you have out of that. And so those who started with a very values-based, a very business-focused focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion are sticking with it today because it would be walking away from a moneymaker for them. That's why they're going to stick with it. And those who never saw it that way, always thought as charity work, those whose initial thought would be DEI means lower standards, but we didn't voice it, we didn't address it, those are the ones that are walking away today.
The reality of it is, those who are committed to the work made it a part of their culture and footprint, and they're still doing the work. And those who were never committed, it never got kicked off to begin with. Let's just be honest about that. Like, it never really took off in the way it should have been, because it shouldn't be that easy to dismantle, because it's a cultural movement about how people treat and respect and acknowledge talent. It's not about actual skin color. Like, it's DEI is not about actual skin color. It's getting people to open up, remove their own unconscious bias, to acknowledge where talent exists and how teams become better because of diversity.
We're seeing fewer people say that they want to go into leadership roles. Fewer people of color and fewer women are saying that they want to go into a leadership role. Why is that? Well, that's because they see how people are being treated.
I feel like the folks that took it as this kind of like unlikely blip in the glitch in the system, short portal door opening, those are the ones who have stayed in those positions or succeeded because they were strategic about either setting up certain things within that framework or smart about who they picked based on maybe some research about the history of whatever organization it was. So of, let's say, I don't know, 15 friends I had across professional sectors that made these leaps in that moment, like 2 still have those positions. This is not just art. This is across the board, philanthropy, government, business, maybe 2.
In Chapter 1, we highlighted many leading companies pledging hundreds of millions of dollars to support diversity and racial equity within their organizations. As we approach the November presidential election, we will see many companies roll back their DEI programs, many eliminating the programs completely. This continues into 2025.
To jump in, and you've been predicting this, we've been waiting for it, and we do have some breaking news from the decision desk. NBC News can now project that Donald Trump has won the state of Wisconsin, which means he is the winner of this race and will return to the White House as this country's 47th president.
President Trump continuing a record-setting flurry of executive actions with a new series of orders that aim to end all federal diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, programs.
Also tonight, the Trump administration calls it common sense. Critics call it an all-out assault on diversity. The president has ordered all federal employees working in diversity, equity, and inclusion roles to be placed on paid leave starting today.
The thing that was sad about it for me is there was something about why we cannot get behind someone who wants to approach the vision for the country, the work of the country, with the joyfulness and the spirit of like, we can, we will, we could do it together. And I'm so happy and proud like to represent and do that. Instead, you know, what that represented to others was like all of these terrible stereotypes, tropes.
I felt really good about my canvassing in Michigan for the day. I had gone out with a girlfriend and we stopped at a gas station. And when we stopped at the gas station, we saw 2 African-American women. They both had like, you know, a bunch of small kids in the car. They were stopping to get gas. And my friend, Sarah, was outside and she's talking to the women, just encouraging them to vote while I'm inside, you know, grabbing snacks for our road trip and preparing to hit the road. And when I came out, one of the women looked at me and she said, "We're gonna go register and we're gonna go vote like she told us to, but she forgot one thing." And I looked at her and I'm walking into the conversation at the last minute, so I don't even know the nature of the conversation. And she said, "America's never gonna elect a woman, let alone a black woman." And this young lady, if I'm gonna, you know, judge based off the persona that was set up, was maybe 25 or less. And as we're driving back, she and I looked at each other and said, "Holy crap, she's right. We forgot one thing. Our candidate, while we think that she is qualified to do the job, her biggest barrier is something that nobody is willing to actually talk about."
We're not the face that we want to put out to the world. I think that part like makes me sad because I think of a lot of things in terms of race. I can't help to do that because most of like what your life experience is in a country like this is that most people will racialize it for you, whether you do it or not.
You know, she's a Black woman running in this role, and she couldn't distinguish herself from her predecessor. She wasn't set up with a succession plan. She wasn't like given that support. It's like we're talking about Black women and the big setup, and we're not talking about Kamala Harris. Like that was the big setup. And still she came at it like not like any other candidate we've ever seen. She came at it joyfully. She came at it in Converse, you know? She came at it with her Black sorority in droves. She came at it with like dancing. And so I think of that as like pretty remarkable.
First of all, I want to say I'm bullish on Black women. I'm bullish on women. And I'm bullish on this country because I know we can do better. I know we can do better. I'd also say around Black women, we talked about their undeniable technical skills, their undeniable leadership, their ability to perform. The narrative that has happened around recent downfalls, terminations, decisions of Black women to lead, to me, that doesn't say anything about their leadership. It doesn't take anything away from their leadership. So I want the viewers to know that Black women are wonderful leaders, highly capable. We're at a moment in our history where it is the most challenging thing for anyone to be a leader right now. Anyone. We're at a moment where social media and the news media can turn an organization on a dime. We're in a moment where employee and civil unrest can happen to any company.
I hope that whether it's the independent parties or the Democratic parties and even the Republican Party, they decide to figure out how to have a bipartisan path forward, right? How to not allow this moment to happen again, because it's going to be disruptive. I don't see a scenario where any population of people win, right? And I think the wealthy think that they're, gaining some level of control and access back, but America is ran off of a diverse economy. There is not one class of people that can sustain our economy. So therefore, some of the richest economies look diverse like the rest of America does.
When we think about Black women and resilience, we only have to look to history to see that Black women, that has been part of our mantra. We are resilient. Whether you're talking about Harriet Tubman or you're talking about Kamala Harris, we are resilient. We will get back up. We will do what needs to be done. Yet, we also deserve to rest. And that is something that we don't think about often because we're doing. And we can't continue in that way. I know that people are tired, and they're tired of being the only ones that understand what's at stake. And one of the reasons that we, I think, understand what's at stake is because we're going to be impacted in a way that other folks who are not from marginalized, who are not from underrepresented communities are going to be impacted. And so it makes sense for us to do this work, yet we have to think about ourselves.
I am the mother to 3 awesome adult daughters. So my oldest daughter in particular, I have had actually a series of challenges over the past year, leadership challenges. And she has been a sage at 28 years old, right? Like she's just been a sage, and she's given me language and ways of being very graceful. And then lastly, as I continue kind of my personal growth journey, I don't think that you ever necessarily end that. I am relearning to just be comfortable just being with me. And sometimes, like in the leadership journey professionally, making sure that you're comfortable with yourself gives you the better opportunity when you have to show up, like in all of these different spaces that sometimes are very comfortable. And sometimes they're very uncomfortable. But what you have to be in that uncomfortable space is still highly present.
And so they've heard the narratives of the strong Black woman. They see it, their grandmothers, me, all of my friends. So this is a reality for them. And I joke with them whenever we see something on television where someone shows up and they kind of save the day and it's a Black woman. She always has this kind of demeanor, right? Where she's like completely disgusted, but she's also well put together. And she does it and it's over. So I joke to my daughters and say, what don't Black women do? And they say, play. So it's like this gift in our house now that if you see Black women, most of the time in any capacity, they're getting it done. And this isn't new, this is historic, but I do think that we're in a moment where Black women are tired of that. And so across the geographic spectrum, across the age spectrum, you are seeing what I think is for the first time, we'll see if it lasts, these kinds of phrases like, drink my water and mind my business. I'm not saving anybody this year. Call me in 4 years. So this idea that we are knowledgeable, that we do things outside of our own best self-interest. We have no expectation that anybody's going to do what they said they were going to do. But out of the good of the whole world, at least this country, but the whole world, we continually do things to make sure that everybody is going to be okay. It's exhausting. It's not cute to have that. It sounds great, but nobody wants a cape all the time. And so what happens now if we just check out?
Oftentimes, Black women are at the bottom of the privilege pyramid. And so we have to deal with racism and with sexism. And we're turned to as like the nurturer in chief throughout it all. And what comes to mind was right after the election, there was a piece of art where it was a bunch of Black women that were sitting on a rooftop watching the world burn. And it said like 92% underneath it. And what it signaled was that once again, Black women had shown up. 92% of the votes for Kamala Harris had come from Black women. And they had canvassed and, raised money and told the right story, and yet here we are. And we knew, what came next. It's still the America that we fell asleep in the night before the election. We knew what was at stake and what was coming. And we knew that even watching the world burn, that the buildings that were burning, it will be Black women who go in to save those people. Our role has been to receive the least and give the most for a really long time. And I'll say that we're just really damn good at it.